Hey guys, welcome back to the video. In this movie, guys, a spoiler-free and spoiler review of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. In all honesty, I genuinely love this movie. I will say there's a few super nitpicks that drag it down just a little bit, but as a whole, I love this movie and it's easily the best video game movie of all time. After settling into Green Hills, Sonic is eager to prove that he has what it takes to be a true hero. His test comes when Dr. Robotnik returns with a new partner, Knuckles, in search of a mystical emerald that has the power to destroy civilizations. Sonic teams up with his own sidekick, Tails, and together they embark on a globe-trotting journey to find the emerald before it falls into the wrong hands. That was the basic synopsis of the movie, and most of this video will be spoiler-free, but near the end of the video, I do want to dive into some spoilers regarding the end of the movie, the post-credit scene, and what's to come in this entire franchise, but I'll be putting a spoiler warning on screen, and time codes will be linked in the description down below if you want to skip around. If you guys are new in here and you enjoy my content like movie reviews, trailer reactions, and all sorts of breakdowns, make sure to subscribe and notifications on so you don't miss any time I upload a video or go live, but without wasting more time, let's get into it. So starting it off with my spoiler-free review, the biggest and best thing I can say about this movie is that it is easily the best video game movie ever made. And the reason for this is because it feels like a video game without feeling just like a cutscene of a video game. Like, for example, the action feels really immersive between Knuckles and Sonic, and even Robotnik is really well implemented into this movie. Now, going into this movie, I did see Sonic when it first came out back in 2020, and then I just rewatched it a day before watching Sonic 2, and I realized that Dr. Robotnik is a phenomenal villain, but I was really scared that they would still just underutilize him in this movie and kind of use him as a side thing for Knuckles, kind of pair the two up. And I'll talk about more of their pairing up later in this video when it comes to the spoiler stuff, but having these relationships in this movie that are super well fleshed out, which I will mention later when I talk about characters specifically, having these general relationships really fleshed out, it makes it feel like video game relationships but in a movie, and it feels like it's translated really well. I also think one big issue with a lot of movie adaptations for video games is that they kind of feel like the main IRL character, the real life non-CG character, that feels like they're always overpowering everything, and there has to be a human character there to kind of take the weight off of the CG characters. This movie does exactly the opposite of that. The CG characters are 100% the forefront of this movie. Dr. Robotnik is obviously the main human that's in this movie, whereas in the last movie, it did feel like the guy that was with Sonic, but in this one, again, Robotnik is the main human, and Knuckles, Tails, and Sonic are all so well utilized in this film, and at a certain point, I kind of forgot that I was watching kind of humans in this world as well. It felt like it was just Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and then obviously Robotnik as the villain. But towards the end of the movie, he gets so out of this world, whereas compared to the last movie, he still felt a lot more grounded, so that it kind of felt like he was more in this fantastical realm, just like Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Now, I will say this is where my biggest nitpick of the movie comes in, which is when they're balancing human and CG characters, and I think they balance them really well. I actually think they balance them perfectly, but my big issue comes in with the fact that the subplot that they chose for the humans was a really bad subplot in my opinion. It was not interesting, and it felt like a drag until the third act, and then the humans felt like they had a real purpose. It felt like how they were utilized in the first movie, and I love how they were utilized in the first movie, but in the second one, it just feels like their wedding subplot that we see in the trailers, it feels too dragged on. Now, it makes sense. It makes actually perfect sense for the story in terms of moving from place to place, and it makes complete sense for that. So I do understand it story-wise, but I just wish that the wedding was a little bit more of a, I guess, detailed subplot, or maybe they just showed less of it, and they kind of used that as an excuse to move the story forward later in the film. And I think one thing that has to do with this whole wedding thing, this whole wedding subplot, is the pacing of the movie. I think in general, the pacing is actually really good, but the second act is where it gets weird, because in this movie, the end of the second act is kind of what you would expect to be like the end of the movie, and then obviously you have a few more twists and turns that kind of lead into the third act, and then you have a massive grand battle at the end, and the grand battle does not disappoint. And again, I'll go into that in the spoiler part of this video, but it was a weird because this wedding subplot kind of took into more action in the second act, and then it led more into the third act that was more fully CG battles and stuff like that. So in my opinion, it didn't really balance as well, and this is the main factor that drags down this entire movie in my opinion, is just this wedding subplot, because it is literally the only subplot for humans in this movie. So I feel like it has to be a good one, or else it's going to drag the movie down. I've seen a lot of people complaining on Twitter specifically about like the cabin sequence and how that was in the beginning of the movie, the introduction of Tails, and how all of that kind of felt out of place. Personally, for me, I liked the way they introduced Tails. It was very sudden, and it wasn't subtle at all. They kind of dove right into it. That's when they also introduced Knuckles and reintroduced Robotnik, and so I felt like a lot happened at once there, so it really worked together, and I think it actually all blended really well together. But the final two things that I have to say for the spoiler-free part of this video video is number one, this movie knows when to be grand and when to go small. And what I mean by that is it knows when to take slower moments for character development and helping us understand the relationship between characters. For example, Knuckles and Sonic, Tails and Sonic, or Sonic and his humans. I think having time to develop those relationships while also having big, massive CGI fest battles, I think it's necessary to build those relationships and have those separated. And when you need something grounded, you have something grounded. But when you need to go full on fantastical, you can go full on fantastical. But the last thing I want to mention, the spoiler-free part of this video, is just that I love the messages in this movie. I think the first one had such a heartfelt message, and the second one has the same thing. I'm not going to specify what characters it's for, but I will say that it's very unexpected. It takes a very emotional twist, and I really, really enjoy that. I will not lie, I did tear up at the very end. There's this one line that I teared up at, which I'll go over in the spoiler part of this video. But just having this message of family and friends is all that you need, and kind of the people that'll take care of you, and also like your time will eventually come. All of these different topics and themes, I don't know, I really, really liked it, and I wasn't expecting to connect with it as much just because this is a very kiddie movie. They joke about farts like 50 times in this movie, so I wasn't really expecting to have an emotional connection to any of these big themes, but I did. But now we're going to be moving on to talking full spoilers for Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So if you want to skip to my final score, my final thoughts and recap on the movie, you can click the timestamp in the description down below. But the first spoiler thing I want to talk about is Knuckles as a whole. I genuinely love this character. I didn't feel like his character was going to be that deep from what the marketing showed, and I didn't actually expect this much of an emotional attachment. But this character of Knuckles, like I mentioned before, kind of goes through the same thing that Sonic was going through in the last movie, but now having Sonic have already gone through all of these things, he can connect with Knuckles on a more emotional level. It's not just like a physical, we're both hedgehogs, we're both kind of out of place here. It's more emotional. It's like we don't have friends, we don't have family, and kind of them coping with it together, and Sonic teaching Knuckles all of these things. It's just really, really well done in my eyes. I will say the pacing with the relationship between Knuckles and Sonic is also so good. It's not like Sonic or Knuckles feels dumb or they do some stupid thing that makes the other one sympathize. It feels like when they both go for the jewel and then Knuckles realizes that Dr. Robotnik isn't actually his friend, and Dr. Robotnik says you shouldn't have trusted me and stuff along those lines. That is a very, very big emotional punch, and I think that they paced out really well because it made me care for this tension between Knuckles and Sonic, as well as the later on a little bit more emotional relationship between Knuckles and Sonic. But now I do want to move on to talk about the scene that I teared up at, and I mentioned this earlier in the video, but I teared up exactly when Sonic said, "I've got more than that, Dad." And this is right before Robotnik is about to stomp on the guy, the girl, and then Sonic, and he's basically about to just kill them. And this is also right before he goes into Super Sonic, so it feels like they're all gonna die. I mean, obviously they weren't gonna die. We're getting a Knuckles spin-off show. We're gonna get a third movie. But that scene really just, I don't know what it was. It just tore me apart. And I think it's also because I did watch the first Sonic movie right before I went to my early screening for Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I had rewatched it right before, and I kind of was like in this mind space of, I'm very connected to this character of Sonic right now. I have not really played much of the video games. I played them here and there, but I'm not an avid Sonic fan, but I was still so connected to these relationships. And that's also something that not many video game movies have been able to do lately, or just in general, is they don't really create a very emotional connection between the human and the CG character, whatever that CG character may be. And I've realized that the Sonic movies have genuinely perfected it, whether it's relationships between a CG and a CG character or a CG and their main human companion. Now, speaking of the main human companion, I do want to talk about, again, that final scene where he goes Super Sonic mode. And in this, I want to talk about the 3 cheer moments that we had in my theater during this film. I really wasn't expecting any super cheerful moments, but people were going crazy at these 3 moments. And the first one is, of course, when he gets all of the stones kind of into him and he becomes Super Sonic. My theater was clapping so loud. Honestly, they clapped more for that moment than they did like Daredevil and No Way Home. The second moment was when Sonic went through and basically obliterated Robotnik's machine, kind of like he tore the head off of it and then went through the leg and stuff like that. My theater was just clapping and cheering. Everyone was having such a fun time. And then obviously the last moment that they cheered at was the post-credit scene. In my opinion, this was the perfect way to tease a brand new character for the Sonic universe. And if you guys have watched this movie already, you know that it is Shadow. Again, I don't know too much about Sonic lore, so I'm just very excited to see him in the next movie. But his design, number one, looks awesome. I love how they do the electricity in the eyes when they first tease a character. I don't know what, but it adds so much depth to a character without actually knowing them. They did it for Knuckles when he got introduced in this movie. They kind of did it for Tails as well, and they obviously did it for Sonic in the first one. But regarding the post-credit scene, all I do have to say is this franchise has potential to be absolutely amazing. This franchise is so far following the steps of having a really good first movie and then the second movie taking it up a whole other level. I hate to make this comparison, but even trilogies like the Dark Knight trilogy, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, they all had these followed formats where the second movie is very, very peak, so I can't wait for the third one for this franchise. But now, for my official score of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, I genuinely think this is the best video game movie to ever exist because it creates a perfect balance between CG and real-life characters. It delivers on all the emotion, and it basically takes everything that the first movie did, but turned it up 1,000 levels. Overall, I give Sonic the Hedgehog 2 an 8.5 out of 10. I, number one, was not expecting to like this movie this much, and number two, I was not expecting it to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I was debating to give it a 9. I'm actually working on a new rating scale, and that video will be out very, very soon, but an 8.5, this would be just a really, really good movie. The main thing that drags this movie down is easily just that one subplot with the humans, as that is their like only subplot in the entire movie. Other than that, I genuinely love this movie. I'm probably gonna go rewatch it next week. I'm so excited to watch it again. But yeah, guys, that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys thought of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.